She witnessed her husband brutally murdered by a gangster. The killers dug a large hole and tossed both bodies inside, believing they had eliminated all witnesses. But they had no idea Brenner was still alive. She was a soldier trained in elite combat skills. Her husband Dylan was a police officer. It all began when Brenner and Dylan were on their way to a vacation destination. During the drive, a man in a truck aggressively overtook them on the road, after making inappropriate and vulgar comments about Brenner. Later, the couple stopped at a roadside restaurant to take a break. While Dylan went to the bathroom, Brenner sat alone at a table outside, unaware that the nightmare was far from over. At that moment, the man from the truck, Butch, reappeared and approached Brenner, escalating his harassment. This time, he was even more aggressive, hurling vulgar insults in an attempt to provoke her. Just as the tension mounted, Dylan emerged from the bathroom. Spotting the confrontation, he immediately stepped in, and a heated exchange of words erupted between him and Butch. The situation was on the verge of spiraling out of control, when an elderly woman from the restaurant intervened. She calmly positioned herself between the two men, diffusing the tension. Turning to Brenner and Dylan, she offered a warm smile and remarked how the townspeople weren't used to seeing such adorable couples passing through. Then she apologized on Butch's behalf. Dylan, visibly calming down, thanked the woman sincerely for her timely intervention and her kindness. The couple resumed their journey, searching for a picturesque spot in the forest to spend the night. As they started setting up camp, a female police officer approached them and initiated a conversation with Brenner. The officer offered a friendly warning, explaining that the locals in the area could be a bit peculiar and often unfriendly toward outsiders. She advised them to exercise caution if they planned to stay overnight. Grateful for her advice, the couple reconsidered their plans and decided to explore the area on a hike instead of camping. After the officer departed, the couple continued their walk through the forest. Dylan playfully asked Brenner whether they should go left or right, and she confidently chose left. As they ventured in that direction, a sudden downpour began. Fortunately, they stumbled upon a small rustic cabin and decided to take refuge inside. While they initially enjoyed the cozy moment together, sharing light-hearted remarks about the weather, Brenner's curiosity got the better of her. However, as Dylan reveled in the romantic atmosphere, Brenner's curiosity drew her to explore the cabin. Venturing into another room, she discovered a concealed compartment. When she opened it, her heart sank. Inside was a stockpile of ammunition. A wave of unease and fear immediately swept over her, shattering the brief tranquility of their evening. With a bite, Brenner immediately called out to Dylan, urging him to check if anything seemed amiss outside. Sharing her unease, Dylan agreed they should leave the cabin as quickly as possible. But before they could escape, Butch suddenly ambushed them from behind, striking them unconscious with the butt of his gun. When they regained consciousness, they found themselves bound and trapped in a dimly lit room. What followed was a nightmare. Butch mercilessly tortured Dylan while forcing Brenner to watch, subjecting her to a harrowing blend of psychological and emotional torment. Fear and helplessness engulfed her, her mind racing for a way out. The situation took an even darker turn when one of Butch's henchmen entered the room and revealed a chilling fact: Dylan was a police officer. The revelation only heightened the danger, as Brenner realized their captors would stop at nothing to silence them. Butch froze for a moment, panic flickering in his eyes. He stepped into the room, locking eyes with Dylan, and for a brief instant he seemed to regret his actions. "I didn't know you were a cop," he muttered, his voice faltering. "I owe you both an apology." But before any further words could be spoken, Butch swiftly drew his gun, his face hardening, and coldly shot both of them without hesitation. He then turned to his men and ordered them to dispose of the bodies. They dragged Dylan and Brenner's lifeless forms to a deep hole and tossed them in without ceremony. The scene shifts to a flashback, where Brenner is seen undergoing rigorous training to become a police officer. The intense focus in her eyes, her disciplined movements, and her unyielding strength make it clear that Brenner is no ordinary woman. She is a fierce, formidable warrior, someone who could make any enemy think twice before crossing her path. The story shifts back to the present as Brenner awakens in the aftermath of the chaos. Miraculously, the bullets had only grazed her, leaving a deep wound and causing significant blood loss, but not taking her life. As she regains her senses, her first instinct is to check on Dylan. The devastating reality hits her. He's gone. Swallowing her grief, she gently covers his body with branches, a small gesture of farewell in the wilderness. Returning to their campsite, Brenner is consumed by sorrow and guilt. She blames herself for Dylan's death, haunted by the fact that it was her idea to take this ill-fated trip. The weight of her regret is suffocating, but her resolve hardens as she remembers who she truly is, a trained fighter, a survivor. The thought of letting Dylan's killers walk free is unbearable. Brenner makes a solemn vow. She will bring justice to those responsible for his death. No matter what it takes, she will hunt them down and make them pay. Grabbing an axe with unwavering determination, Brenner sets out to execute her plan for revenge. Her steps are firm, her purpose clear, justice for Dylan. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Butch, who has returned to his mother's house. Inside, the atmosphere is one of menace and dread. Butch and his sons cruelly torment a woman, their brutish behavior on full display. Butch, reveling in his power, grabs her from behind and forces a kiss as she struggles to break free. The townsfolk live in terror of Butch and his family, who have kidnapped women and committed unspeakable acts without consequence. As Butch revels in his vile behavior, his mother enters the room, commanding him to eat quickly because there's work to be done. Unbeknownst to them, Brenner has been preparing for her next move. She's crafted a sharp weapon from wood, and with precise swiftness she ambushes and eliminates one of Butch's henchmen, the first step in her relentless path of vengeance. Though it's evident she takes no pleasure in the brutal actions she must carry out. After eliminating the first man, and carefully hiding his body, she vanishes into the dense forest, a shadow moving with purpose. Her mission continues as she tracks down another target, dispatching him with precision. She then wounds another man, severing his leg. But instead of finishing him off, she watches silently as he drags himself away, granting him a sliver of mercy, or perhaps leaving him to endure his suffering as a warning. Determined to dismantle Butch's hold on the area, Brenner sets a critical cabin ablaze. The ensuing fire triggers a massive explosion, a fiery spectacle that shakes the forest. In the aftermath, the scene shifts to Sheriff Hobbs, a weathered man with a gun at his side. Hearing the echo of the explosion, he sets out to investigate, intent on uncovering the source of the chaos. Meanwhile, the explosion draws Butch and his mother's attention. Spotting smoke billowing from the direction of his cabin, a growing sense of unease grips Butch. Without hesitation, his mother orders him to investigate. As he ventures into the forest, Butch stumbles upon one of his men grievously injured from Brenner's attack. Acting quickly, he helps the wounded man into his truck and drives off to seek help. Unbeknownst to him, Brenner lies hidden in the bed of her own truck, silently observing and waiting for her next move. Upon returning home with the grim news of his men's deaths, Butch faces his mother's wrath. Her anger boils over as she scolds him harshly, blaming him for the chaos and slapping him in a fit of frustration. The tension between them thickens, signaling the unraveling of their control. Butch's mother orders him to seek out the Outsiders, a formidable group she knows could provide the muscle they now desperately need. It becomes clear that she has a vast network at her disposal, filled with valuable resources and insider information. To gain an edge, she visits an old acquaintance, a scholarly recluse with access to extensive records. She tasks him with digging into Brenner's background. As the man sifts through the files, he uncovers startling information. Brenner isn't just any woman. She's a former military operative with elite training. The revelation leaves Butch's mother visibly shaken, realizing they're up against someone far more dangerous than anticipated. Meanwhile, Sheriff Hobbs ventures deeper into the woods, where he stumbles upon the lifeless body of one of Butch's men. Alarmed, he immediately radios the command center, reporting the grim discovery and hinting at the violent events unfolding in the area. While Brenner continues her meticulous preparations in the forest, skillfully setting traps to counter those hiding nearby. Sheriff Hobbs's team arrives at the scene of the discovery. Examining the body, one of the officers identifies it as a member of the Notorious group, led by the woman known simply as Mother. The officer explains that the entire forest operates under Mother's control, with every action and activity dictated by her orders. A figure of immense influence and fear, she owns all the land in the area and holds the locals in her grip. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, Sheriff Hobbs grows increasingly uneasy about her power and dominance. Determined to understand the full extent of her authority, and perhaps challenge it, he requests a face-to-face meeting with the enigmatic and dangerous woman. A young woman working in the command center quickly alerts Mother that Sheriff Hobbs is on his way to see her. It becomes apparent that this woman is also on Mother's payroll, part of her extensive network of influence. Shortly after, a group of the sheriff's deputies arrives to report the discovery of bodies in the forest. Mother, however, feigns ignorance about the incident involving her men. Instead, she fabricates a story, claiming that the deceased man had taken his own life. She even acts as though her people were the victims of an unprovoked attack. Despite clearly recognizing her deception, Sheriff Hobbs chooses not to confront her directly. Without challenging her claims, he silently gathers his men and leaves, his unease growing. That night, Mother and her children mourned the loss of their close ally, drinking heavily until they eventually passed out. Butch awoke in a drunken haze, too disoriented to sense the danger around him. As he stumbled into the room, Brenner was there, waiting silently in the shadows. Without hesitation, she struck, slashing his throat in a swift, calculated move to avenge her husband's death. She stood motionless, watching him struggle for breath until his body finally gave out by morning. Remaining hidden, Brenner observed the grim reality of the place. One of Mother's men dragged a young girl into a room and locked her inside. As Brenner quietly investigated, she discovered the horrifying truth. There were many other girls imprisoned here, victims of Mother's ruthless control. Overcome with sympathy and a renewed sense of purpose, Brenner resolved to free them. Suddenly, one of the girls let out a scream of warning, alerting a nearby guard. The armed man stormed in and opened fire on the group, tragically striking and killing one of the girls instantly. Brenner, however, remained composed. Drawing on her elite combat skills, she swiftly neutralized the man with deadly precision. Realizing they were now in immediate danger, Brenner led a girl named Emily into the forest, finding a secluded spot to hide. Meanwhile, Mother received the devastating news of Butch's death and the escape of all the captive girls. Overcome with grief and fury, she lashed out, unable to contain her anguish at the loss of her son. Consumed by vengeance, she issued a relentless order. Her men were to hunt down Brenner at all costs. With hounds and a full search party mobilized, the hunt for Brenner began. In the forest, one of Mother's men stumbled upon Brenner's hideout, but he couldn't escape the trap she had set and was swiftly killed. Another man arrived soon after, only to meet the same fate as Brenner, shot him without hesitation. That night, Brenner and Emily sat together in a rare moment of peace, talking and finding comfort in each other's company. Emily, with a sense of fear, confided in Brenner that she was pregnant and terrified of what might happen if her mother ever found her. The thought of death haunted her, and she didn't know what her mother would do if she was captured. Brenner, with quiet determination, reassured her, promising to protect her and help her escape to start a new life far from the danger they faced. Meanwhile, Mother's special enforcer Hunk led a pack of hunting dogs into the forest, determined to track Brenner down and continue the relentless pursuit. The following morning, Emily was captured, but Brenner arrived just in time to eliminate her captors. Sheriff Hobbs was also at the scene when one of Hunk's men shot him in the leg. Quick to react, Brenner noticed the assassin and immediately took him down. Afterwards, she and Emily rushed to help Hobbs, getting him to safety. Brenner warned the sheriff that they needed to mislead their enemies, or they would continue to target these locations, making it increasingly difficult to handle them. Brenner and Emily decided to leave their hiding spot and followed the creek, eventually reuniting with the female officer who had previously warned them. They sought her help, and she instructed them to get into her car. Exhausted, both Brenner and Emily collapsed into the seats and quickly fell asleep. However, when they woke up, they were surrounded by Mother and her men. It was then revealed that the female officer had been secretly working for Mother, taking money from her all along. As the group began to torture them, Emily, in her desperation, confessed to Mother that she was pregnant with Butch's child. At the revelation, Mother immediately commanded her men to take Emily to a separate room. Meanwhile, Brenner was restrained in a cell, awaiting her torture. However, Emily secretly snuck in food and, to everyone's surprise, killed the guard. She quickly freed Brenner, and together they made their way into the room where Mother and her men were assembled. A fierce battle broke out as Brenner fought fiercely, taking down one opponent after another. In the heat of the confrontation, Mother pressed a knife to Emily's throat, threatening to kill her unless Brenner dropped her weapon. In the heat of the struggle, a man ambushed Brenner from behind, while Mother coldly slashed Emily's throat. Brenner quickly eliminated the attacker, but when she reached Emily, the heartbreaking truth struck. Emily was already gone. 3 months later, the scene shifts to Mother, calmly sitting in her garden when she receives a chilling message. Judgment Day. Before she can react, a bullet strikes her in the head. From her concealed vantage point in the forest, Brenner watches, her vengeance complete. With the mission finished, Brenner walks away, leaving the past behind, as the film closes on her determined exit. Thank you for watching.